Hi, Steve Stahlberg here with monthly painting video number 82, made in Kuala Lumpur, October 2020. This month the subject is partially inspired by Cammy from Street Fighter, but of course different, because fan art is frowned on generally, especially here on Patreon. She's dressed in all black. I also used this reference for inspiration, although there will be a pantsless version and a nude version, as I often do, and because due to popular demand, and she's going to have dark hair, not blonde hair, like Cammy does, and those weird bracelets, those big red things she has. Instead of that, she's going to have a big futuristic gun, like the reference I just showed you just now. And she's also not as muscular. Yeah, I just made her different. So she started out fairly muscular in the drawing. I mean, it kind of looks that way in the drawing, but for some strange reason here, when you get the color in here, it's beginning to come here. I'm flattening in the colors on different layers, as you see on the right hand side there: arm, gun, suit, girl, different layers, like I always do. When the perspective becomes more clear, you see part of the boot there, and your brain becomes aware of that. You're looking up at her, and there's a perspective. There's the the leg is coming towards you. So all of a sudden, then the leg doesn't seem as muscular as it did before. When the perspective changes. So I'm just working out some detail. I'm just sort of going in and fixing the edges of the selections that I made previously. You can see them here. This is how I work. I've talked about this many times before in many other videos. I just prefer these what you see is what you get kind of thing without any sort of layer masks and stuff like that. You can work the same way, but you can see here what especially with naming. I need to name, and also I have as few layers as possible. I really hate it when there's like 200 layers and they're all named, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, And yeah, here I'm just coloring in different things. Let's see, what am I working on right now? The suit. Okay, so I'm on the suit somewhere. Yeah, they're putting some shading on the boobs up there, and the gun. And her now is on the girl layer, that's her skin, darkening it up because it's obviously, you can see it's nighttime. That's moonlight. Now, if that had been sunlight, you can tell from the rest of the sky. The actual sun and the moon would be the same color, like just bright white. But the difference is the surrounding areas, the surrounding sky, and the things that are lit by it are lit less strongly. So it is a bit tricky to do full moonlight, as opposed to sunlight, where I guess maybe because we're more used to sunlight, we're usually not outside much in the moonlight at night. At least I'm not. So yeah, a blue bounce light here, bluish. That's also another thing. If you're doing a night image, somewhere there has to be some cool light. In this case, I didn't choose to make everything coolish, just the smoke here and the bounce light, or the opposite light, the environmental light. But you do see here, I'm trying to cool off her skin a little bit there in the shadowy areas, the parts not lit by the moon. The moon does have a warm glow to it often. So it kind of looks, sometimes it looks yellowish, sometimes it looks kind of greenish because it mixes with especially the light halo around the moon can look sort of greenish, but also often there's a rainbow. I thought about putting that into like a circular rainbow around the moon, but that's ice particles that do that. High clouds, high wispy clouds can make that happen, and I I was a little bit scared of the difficulty of doing that properly. But I guess it wouldn't have been that difficult, I guess. I haven't tried it, so I don't know. But I would have used circular selections on a layer and then created the rainbow colors and then faded the layer out probably quite a lot and just left a very, very subtle effect in the end. And here I'm trying to keep some brush strokes. I'm working on the mouth right now, but you'll see as I go along, you'll see me trying to keep these brush strokes, but I'm going to pretty much obliterate them later because they're not really working in my favor. Let's see my notes here. Yeah, I decided to have a light source visible behind her because I like edge lighting like this, glancing lighting. And if you're choosing between sun or moon, it's usually best to choose the moon because the sun is like way too strong and uh, it depends how you arrange other uh, items around like roofs, buildings, ceilings, things that shade, things that throw shade onto your subject. But it's difficult to work with a bright blue sky. It's very difficult color to sort of harmonize and get to work with your composition and stuff. Other suitable lights like that you could use like this to create edge lighting could be street lights or any man-made light, but they often come in groups, and I wanted to keep it simple here, so the moon is perfect for that. And the cloud cover is another way to make the moon less contrasty back there, and against a black sky, an empty black sky, and also it's a more interesting looking background. You wouldn't have seen any stars if if the full moon just kills all the starlight, except maybe way. If you look away from the moon quite a lot, then you might be able to see a few strong stars. And here I'm roughly blocking in the air. And you saw there, I started with a very hot red color at the bottom because it's just way easier than to put in actually it looks better too. You put the darker color in first, and this wasn't very dark, but it was the darker color to put on the ear. And so you put that in first, and then you put the lighter colors in later. It kind of gives a more painterly feeling. Not sure why. For some reason, you can tell that those strokes are sitting on top of the other strokes, and I guess this is what makes it look. If you don't do them 100%, if you do them a little bit wispy, like I did there, they can look a little bit more oil painterly, kind of. That's what I'm trying to go for here. You can see the smudging I did here on the cheek, on the Terminator line here, um, which is a good place to put this kind of painterly stroke because it'll be very noticeable there. But I actually reduced that a little bit later as well, as you'll see in the final image. And here it's just in the wrong place, so I'm moving it. This is just an image editing technique that I'm sure you know how to use as well. Like most people who have Photoshop, they know how to Photoshop photos and stuff. And that's where I started too. That's where I started using Photoshop on photographs, but later used it for painting. And you can see here the bangs are a bit asymmetrical, and so I'll fix that later. But actually, the whole face is a bit off, so I'm trying to warp the face into submission now. You see me doing a few things there. Yeah, now I'm doing the other side. And again, this is photo editing techniques that you can use on photos as well, that a lot of people start off doing on photos, which is like what I said, what I did. And then now here I'm using it on painting. So you see, I'm trying not to kill the brushstrokes. I'm trying to keep the brushstrokes. That's why I'm doing this cut and paste kind of thing, instead of repainting the whole area, from scratch, which is probably the more artistic thing to do. But, who's got time for that? I'm an artist, but I'm not that much of an artist. Let's see my notes again. Roughly blocking the light and shading. Yes, I've been over that. And then starts the noodling. Yes, we're well into the noodling here now. So yeah, rough block out with big brush, zoomed out, and then you zoom in, get a smaller brush, and you continue gradually, step by step, zoom closer, smaller brush, zoom closer, smaller brush, like that, until you're happy. And then at a certain stage, you got to zoom out again. You got to start zooming out, back, out in. Just you have to have an overview of what you're doing after a while. But like the first 50% of the work is a gradual zooming in kind of thing. Here I'm doing the gun, and I'm just sort of detailing a rectangle here, which is I'm gonna use perspective warping to place it, like all the concept artists do when they're photo bashing buildings and whatnot, environments. And in this case, any object that is sort of rectilinear in close up, like you could do this to cars or tanks, whatever. I mean, I recommend it. I think you should do this. It's quick and easy, instead of drawing it in perspective from the start. But I'll also do a grid. I'll draw a grid on top of this gun here now, just to help with, because this one rectangle is easy. But if I have other rectangles, or if I would want to draw more lines on this thing here now, which I should, because there are other structures. That's not just the only structure on this gun. So I'm going to need a perspective grid here, which I will draw in a moment. And I'm also going to draw a small ellipse right there on the opening of the grenade launcher there, because you have them for free in Photoshop. It's so easy to use. You should definitely use them whenever you have, like this small one here is not that important because you can barely see it. But whenever you have an ellipse that you're going to see, like this clear contrasty edge right there, you should definitely use the Photoshop tool. Just adding some detail. Kind of rough detail. And I could have zoomed in further, but like here I am zooming in just to get this right, because this is crucial. Because we instantly see if an ellipse is wrong, we just feel it. Almost for some people on a subconscious level, like something feels wonky. And the way to make sure it doesn't end up wonky or janky is to use the tools that are available in Photoshop. This grid, for instance. I mean, Photoshop, there are tools to use. You can make a perfect grid, but in this case, I just winged it. I just made my own grid. It's fairly easy. I'm used to it. After a certain number of decades, you can make your own grid like that. But yeah, there are automated grids as well that you can use. To me, they get a bit confusing though, because there are lines all over the place. But anyway, I usually just make a a small efficient grid just right in the area where I need it, like this. And I'm putting some more detail on the gun here, rest of the gun. And this is interesting. This grip here, it's supposed to be able to slide to cock the gun to load the next grenade, and obviously it can't slide right now. So you'll see me adding that later towards the end. I'll just cut off a part of the handle here and just show an internal sort of rail that the handle can slide along. And I've detailed the fingers a little bit. I'm going to detail them even more now. She's wearing a kind of a glove that's some ninja type special service soldiers, maybe SEAL soldiers wear. I don't know. When it's a bit cold and you need to keep warm, or maybe it's fire retardant clothing she has, or some kind of armor. It could be futuristic, one of these memory armors that kinetic impact that stiffens on impact. But anyway, you need to have the trigger finger, sensitive and if free like this. So maybe not. Maybe you don't want to have the glove covering your trigger finger. Anyway, that was the intent behind that. And here I'm just adding a little display, a little LED display, just for sci-fi fun, Just adding a little flavor to the side of the gun there. Maybe it's a little bit less boring. And it's nearly done now. Yeah, here you can see, yep, I'm fixing the handle here. So it sort of racks forward when you push it forward and then back again to load another grenade in there. Now, don't ask me where the grenades are stored in this. I could have made that magazine a bit thicker. That would have been where you could expect the grenades to be sitting right here in this magazine. But yeah, that's done. I have, like I said, the pants version and the pantsless version. Here you can see I warmed up the edge a little bit, maybe a bit too much. But I have the warm light here on the moon as well, so it kind of makes sense. And actually, it does make sense that the smoke is blue when the clouds are warm, because the smoke has a different type of microparticle in it, and it's a whole scientific thing. Smoke, there's a lighting effect that has a name that I can't remember. It's an optical effect that happens with smoke and other materials with suspended particles like that. Anyway, added a little bit of background, water, moonlight on the water, and yeah, I think that's it. Thanks for your support, and see you next month.